Ever since my daughter was in middle school, she gave me the nickname Podge. And ever since then, that's what my daughter calls me. That's what all of her friends call me. We were always super close, and I was really worried when she was going off to college that maybe we'd grow apart a little bit more. So I just sort of racked my brain. What could I do to try to stay as connected to her as possible? So I came up with the idea that every Sunday, I would record a 5-minute episode about the kind of topics we might normally talk about. Send it to her Monday morning, and then she could watch it on her way to campus. I thought it'd be a good idea to resurrect that. They'll be the kinds of topics that I would talk to my now 25-year-old daughter, or the younger version of myself, or people that I mentor, or maybe you.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Coffee with Podge. This is the anniversary edition, and I'm drinking water instead of coffee this week. It's my 2-year wedding anniversary with my lovely wife, Sina. We're actually here in Universal Studios. We're going to be moving from Miami to Scottsdale, Arizona. So we've got our bucket list of things we're trying to do before we leave Miami, going to Harry Potter World for a day. Anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about, since I've been with my lovely wife now for 9 years and married for 2, after I swore I'd never get married again and couldn't be more happily married, that I'd share some of what I think are, I don't know if they're exactly secrets, but things that make a difference in our relationship and I think can help others. The first one is always treat each other with respect. This is one that I think people get wrong. It's weird. People treat the people they're closest to, ironically, often with the least respect and the most contempt because they can get away with it. I think this is particularly true in people's romantic relationships, family relationships as well, too. And I think you have to, it's exactly the opposite of what you should do. And I think it's everything from watching the language that you use with each other to the tone of voice that you use with each other. And look, nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. My wife's not perfect. Well, I think we've never been mean, unkind. We've never yelled at each other in the 9 years we've been together. Anyone can wake up on the wrong side of the bed and maybe use the wrong tone of voice. When you do something like that, all you have to do is say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, honey. So I'm having a bad day," and that's all it takes. Just really be thoughtful about that. John Guttman wrote a book. I think it was called The 4 Horses of the Apocalypse, where he says, "Hey, it's this very complicated algorithm. He has videotapes couples having a disagreement, and he's able to predict with something like 95% accuracy who still will be married in 5 years. And it's based on people have contempt for each other. If either partner has contempt for each other, kind of game over for the relationship. Keep things fun. As I mentioned, here we are. I'm 59 years old. My wife's in her 30s. And here we are at Harry Potter World. We made it a point to go to late last night because we're only here for one day to get our magic wand so she can have her wand when we're going around the parks today. Try to keep it fun, do things that are maybe silly and foolish just because you can and you enjoy doing them together. Be curious and interested in what matters to the other person, even if it's not your thing. My wife's really into fashion and design and things like that, things that weren't necessarily things that mattered to me at all. And yet, as she exposed me to things, I embrace them. And I even have a little bit of style now, thanks to her. And I actually enjoy, sort of the more aesthetic, lens of looking at things through, which I didn't used to. And so, and I'd say in her case, well, for a while, she had a successful career. I wouldn't say she's a business-oriented person, but she's involved in she knows exactly what's going on in my business relationships and the businesses that I'm either an investor in or operationally involved in or things I'm doing personally, my own personal brand. And she's super helpful in those things. She'll hear one side of a conversation and say, "Oh, I didn't really like the way that guy sounded. He seemed a little shady," or whatever it might be. Being interested and curious in what your partner's doing is super important. I mean, I think, in all the relationships I've had throughout the years, it's amazing how not interested many of my partners have been. And it's annoying, actually, when the person you're with doesn't seem to be at all interested in what you do. Don't be a yes man and don't be a jerk. And this is a fine line that people have to walk because on the one hand, you actually see both things in relationships, right? You'll see people that whatever their partner says, especially if it's a relationship where, say, the husband is working and the wife is not, or where the wife's just like, well, basically whatever you say, honey, that's actually not what's in someone's best interest, in either direction. One of the things I love about my wife, which is she doesn't just agree with my point of view. I'm a good bit older and have a lot more experience, but so what? She's going to give me her point of view anyway. What will happen is when she'll give me her point of view, and sometimes I'll disagree and I'll say, well, I could see why you'd see it that way. Or I might ask questions. And I'll be able to, but here's why I think this is the right move. And one of two things is going to happen. Either I'm going to persuade her more or she's going to persuade me more. Both happen. And even if it's an area of domain expertise of mine and not hers, and let's say that I'm right, 85% of the time, that 15% of the time, she's really added huge value for me, and vice versa. She's going through some family stuff now, and we'll talk about the situation, and I'll give her my point of view. And yeah, she doesn't have to take my point of view. I'm always going to share it. I'm never going to be a jerk about it. We might playfully tell each other, I told you so after the fact, but it's always playful. It's just like we want the best for the other person, and we're always focused on that. You've got to share a growth mindset. There really are only 3 ways that I see things go. Neither person has a growth mindset. Well, I don't even know what that relationship looks like, but it's not very interesting. Both people start at somewhat the same levels, and one person has a growth mindset and one person doesn't have a growth mindset. But you're pretty much guaranteed to know how that's going to work out, right? One person's going to grow, and then that's eventually not going to work out. But I think the most fun and interesting way to travel through life, especially in a relationship, whether a friendship or even a romantic relationship, is to have that shared growth mindset where, improving yourself and they're improving themselves. It doesn't necessarily have to be the Layla, Alex Hormozy thing where they're almost like psychotic about, we have to grow every day, or we're, drinking violets or whatever. But I do think that there's, it can really make the journey so much more fun. The last one that I think people understand directionally, but I don't think they understand it as much as they need to, is the need for physical affection. And physical affection isn't just about sex, though, of course, that matters too. It's everything from, my wife and I was recording a couple of podcasts yesterday, and, we had a long drive from Miami up to Jacksonville for the podcast. And, just touching someone's, hand or leg, or even looking in someone's eyes, the tone of voice you talk to somebody in makes such a difference. Physical affection is important, and you've got to prioritize it. Obviously, it should always be genuine, but let's hope that if all the other items on the list are there, the physical affection should be easy. That's my anniversary edition coffee, or in this case, water with Podge. See you next week.